The microphone. Okay, that's correct. Now, could you guys say something? That device is incorrect also, so let me just configure that. All right, testing again.
Hello, hello.
All right, cool. Now you are transmitted live. My microphone's also transmitted live, which is now working. Exceptions about that. I will carry on.
Brilliant.
I do have quite a bit of background noise. Let me just ask your friend to turn it down a little.
All right.
All right, got it. The background noise, let me just up my threshold with my voice. Okay, moving that up. Could you guys still hear me?
Yep.
All right, cool. How about the background noise?
It's a lot better.
Cool. All right, so let's carry on. So this project here with Sleepy Bunny was another collaborative project that I did. And this had a team of 3 people as well. I did the majority again. And a couple of the projects, the ones that I'm currently working on, is a couple of other projects for Lord of the Flowers. This was another team project that I did. Internship, I did most of it, but for a couple of others. And the current projects I'm working on now, basically, it's not finished yet. Past projects I have been working on has been much larger. These are the team projects that I'm currently been using a lot lately, which is this one here. Load up the pictures from there, from the progress. So this project is the one that has had about 8 people on contract. So over the year, I had a couple other people hired, total of about 14. Different names worked with me last year. So collaboratively, these are the projects that I've been working on the most as a collaboration. When it comes to other projects, there is a television here animation series that happened here in Colombia. This project had 60 animators and about 120 or 150 people work on this project. So this project aired in national television here, and this was produced in Blender 2.79. Crazy, right? And it was a cutout style animation. I did the layout and worked with other people there. So this is probably the biggest collaboration I did, but this was in an animation studio, so it's a little bit different. So that's my context. My context is small teams, medium-sized teams, and working with bigger teams, but not as a director. So you've been wondering recently about group projects. How do you do it? How do you work together? Short film, what would be the recommended process to do so? The first things you need to think about, well, I'll ask you, Isaac, what do you think is the most important thing when it comes to collaborating with others?
I mean, like, I want to say efficiency, but I think deeper than that, or on another level of that, like making sure you're not doing each other's work, like only doing the work once, and yeah, not stepping on toes. Um, and then also like being able to coordinate that is and coordinate it not only in like who does what work, but also deciding like, all right, who's best at these specific tasks and distributing the work appropriately from there.
All right, these are good points. Okay, efficiency, no stepping on toes, coordination, who does what, who's good at what, and distribution. Okay, so let's take a look at the requirements of how you make a short film, basically. So you have you have a story, right? You have a pipeline of production, and then with the pipeline, you have pre-production. Then you have the production. Everybody knows this, and then you have the post, right? And then from there, you have the distribution. There's a whole different step, right? So basically, when you have a short film, you have the general idea, which is the idea or the direction, okay? direction of the story, which means you have a couple of people figuring out what the story is and what they need to do, what is the general direction of how the team should work. Then you have people who think about the pipeline, which would be the same directors of the story, be a different team of people that works closely with the people from the story, so that together they can start directing and managing the pipeline, which is kind of like a factory, right? So in a factory, let's take a look at a picture of a factory. Chain. Factory production line. You guys familiar with Ford?
Yes.
You know what he invented? What made it interesting?
The
Yeah,
whole factory production line.
pretty
He
much.
first used like the rolling lines.
Rolling lines, exactly.
Yeah. My great
Um,
grandfather worked at one of those.
I've worked in factories too, food processing factories. But basically, a factory is like what it does is it to create volume and quality. It takes one step of the process, and that one step is repeated by the members of the factory over and over and over again to go through a line to get produced to the finished result, right? So when you think of like a factory production line, well, the short film is production is done in a semi-similar way, except maybe the people or the machines that are doing the different parts of the production line or process of maturity may jump from one position to another if it's a small team. If it's a very big team, then you have one person who's specialized, like this robot, specialized in welding the aluminium or aluminum frame and does that very well and very quickly. That's a specialist. You have a specialist artist and you have a generalist artist, and then you have your
So
supervisors. Huh?
is it more like one guy does one asset, guy does one asset, and in the end it gets all combined into one giant scene? Or is it more like one guy does all the meshes, guy does all the UVs, one guy does all the like textures? How is it split up there?
Okay, that's exactly where I'm driving this. Based on the pipeline, you have specific needs, and then you have different skills, right? So what Isaac said here about who does what and who is good at what. So in this case, who is good at what, you can divide people up into like generalist with specific, like, is he a journalist with a bias towards animation, or is he biased towards texturing? A generalist biased towards rigging. And then you have a specialist. So a specialist is someone who focuses specifically on one piece of the pipeline. So, and then from there, you have supervisors or directors. Okay. So these people, a generalist will be like good at mostly everything and maybe very good at a couple of. That's a generalist. But a specialist is good at one particular thing or a couple, one or a couple particular things, very good at one and a couple of things, and is very efficient. You break specialist. That's what JKI said in the. So basically, a specialist is good for like super big machines that has a place for someone who's a very good specialist. For example, a sculptor, a character sculptor, or a hair groom artist. Very specific lighting TD or a water specialist, water simulation. But a generalist, he's a type of character who will jump around the pipeline and do many different things. So we're working with small teams, working on a short film, 5, 10 people. So we have someone who's thinking up the idea or who's generating the story. And then you have other people who are working in the pre-production part of the phase, and then you have other people who might be good at doing the production. Sorry about the jet. And then you have other people who are probably very good at doing the post-production, or you have some people who are good at all of these 3 stages. These people are extremely valuable. These people are typically the people you hire to become supervisors and directors. Good at everything, understands the pipeline, and is willing to collaborate, delegate. Okay? These supervisors and directors are typically someone who's a very good generalist. So if you want to be a specialist, maybe you'll be a specialist in a particular area if they have multiple hierarchies of people and you work with the hundreds of people. You have someone who's working as the general director, and then you have the animation director, and then you have animation supervisors, and each supervisor has 5 animators with a 4-step hierarchy of management, like a big business. That could be the case, but for a short film, you don't need 5 steps of hierarchy. All you need is 2 steps. The person who has the story, who has the big picture, pipeline, supervisor, and then you have the generalist who does the work. And the supervisor as well, being a good leader, obviously, what makes a good leader is someone who leads by example. So supervisors know how the job is done and they make it happen. Develop the pipeline, they develop the tools, they develop the rigs, they develop the production, they do the work, they direct the animation by blocking out the animation, they design the look dev documents of the actual story and the idea, they do the creative work. A good leader and a good supervisor is someone who's a good generalist. So in that case, okay, so you're making a short film, you need someone who's a good generalist to supervise the people who can do the other work. You have a small budget or you have a big budget, so now you need people to work on the production. So this is like, okay, so who does what? In this case, now we know who's good at what and how they're good at it. So for example, we find you have a couple of friends or a couple of people that you found in a conference somewhere, or you've worked with you rub shoulders with somebody in an animation studio, or you met someone on Discord, and you find out that they're really good at making shaders, but they're also good at making models, and maybe they can do a simple rig. Cool. You found a generalist who has a bias towards creating models. Yeah? So from there, okay, so now we have a generalist. He can fit in the part of creating models and textures and things with the production. He can work with the production part of the stage. So he can start making models, creating props, characters, creating the environment, creating whatever you need. He can start also doing materials, textures. What happens if you find another generalist who also does 3D modeling, but also does animation? Oh, great. He's super useful. He can also be in the production stage because he can do the animation. All right, what happens if you find a generalist who's very good at doing rigging? Very good at doing concept art? Well, you find out, okay, so if he's good at concept art and rigging, he could be almost a part of the story or part of the pre-production stage, preparing the rigs, preparing the pipeline, preparing the tools, and also at the same time, designing the concepts of the world, imagining, pulling out ideas and creating ideas. So depending on who that person, how good he is and how many different things he can do well, would be more valuable to the team, especially if it's small. And if he's very good at one specific thing and you have enough people to do everything else and you have a budget to do it, find yourself a very good specialist. So that you don't have to the specialist also needs to have some experience as a generalist because they need to work with other people to understand where they're coming from. So for example, you get a rigging specialist. He needs to know something about animation. And he needs to know something about modeling because he needs topology to understand what the rig is used for. So it's kind of like always target good generalists. Generally, if you want a good, efficient pipeline, it's with a small amount of people. If you have a big business, then yes, it's usually more cost effective to use a specialist. Just like in a factory.
I have a quick, basic, clarifying question.
Yep.
In terms of distinguishing between your idea and direction for the story and the actual pre-production, what is the main distinguishing factor there? Is it Yeah, because I usually imagine like I'm used to like the film set terminology of pre-production. At least in my head, involves like writing the script and things like that. So like, what distinguishes that for you and for
Me?
pre projects?
Okay, with my projects, I divide into three pieces based on draw up a pen because it's easier to draw than tell it. Basically, with the pre-production stage, so this is the pipeline, right? It goes downwards. You have the start and the three parts, right? In the pre-production stage, I would have the story, like story writing. I would have storyboard. I would have concept art. I would also have an animatic, audio.
What's
Ah,
an animatic?
right. An
Can you just
animatic,
run that down?
animatic is practically an animated storyboard to the audio,
Oh,
and it can be made in 2D and it can be made in 3D, or it can be a maturity of. So an animatic is practically timeline and video edit of your storyboard.
oh,
Storyboard.
I think I
Hmm?
know what you mean. I once saw one where it was literally just the animators acting out the scene in like an office.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, it could work. Like, it doesn't really matter. You could use video references, voice acting, etc. Audios with the voice acting, like I mentioned earlier, a couple weeks back, months back. But basically, story, audio, storyboard, concept art, animatic. From the concept art, we also start doing block modeling, layout, character design, everything we need, all the blueprints, everything we need to start delegating the work to the production, the audio, voice acting. Okay, so all of this, including like sometimes I even have like a look development. So look development is basically how am I going to make the product look? Do a test production. This is what you would see in like Pixar and Disney, where they like when they were working on Soul, they were using Houdini to develop the characters. So they made like a look development stage where they develop how things look. Or Mitchell versus the Machines, they had a whole uh, look development phase of doing different things, or like different movies. How cartoony do we want it, or how realistic do we want it, or what kind of style do we want? This is the look div part. So once we have this all clear, pre-production part of the stage, visual development and look development. Look development sometimes is used. That's a good question. Kate just asked: is look dev and vis dev interchangeable? Visual development and look development, I use it as the same thing. Sometimes look development is also synonymous with illumination and shading. So it's kind of interchangeable, but English is not my principal language, maybe. Whatever. I just call it look dev, vis dev, same thing. So from there, you're in the production part. So in the production part, you start thinking about, okay, you take in the blueprints. Use a blue pen, show the blueprint. You take the blueprints, you start making everything. Modeling and the sculpting, UVs, and rigging. Sometimes I do rigging in pre-production because rigging sometimes takes a long time to get it right. Because rigging's iterative and then animation's iterative and time sometimes to do it right. And then you have like your developing your special effects, which go into your your post production. Have your animation and blocking. But start maturing your animatic, and it goes through different stages: blocking stage, spline stage, refinement stage, and then finish stage. Start doing your illumination, start doing pre-rendering, and then you start setting up your renders, and you go move into post-production. And then in post-production, you start doing your rendering, and you start doing your compositing and special effects and finding animation and your final edits and your final foley and sound. So this is the part where it's like, okay, all the animation is done. Now, just how do we make it look great? How do we edit it to the final story to make loop back to make sure the story is okay? And then you finish the production.
Hmm.
Yeah. So when I reference to pre-production, it's more about the part of like preparation and making sure your general draft of the film is ready. When I reference to production, I'm talking about the work of making it become real. When I think of post-production, it's the work of making it come together in one piece. Yeah.
Hmm. Real quick, you mentioned one of the development parts of production is the special effects. What does special effects mean in relation to a 3D project?
Cloth simulations, water simulations, fire simulations, metrics,
Hmm.
things, secondary animation, or hair, fur, or articles like construction effects,
Okay.
explosions, or
So it's pretty much just anything simulated?
yes and no, just secondary animation, I guess you could say. Effects like principal animation is like character driven animation with acting, camera block out, animatics, things like that. But secondary animation would be your special effects, things that happen that react to the principal acting. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay,
All right.
that's really cool.
So that's the general idea. And special effects, as it's reactive, sometimes it's done in the post production stage because you have your principal characters animated, your camera set up, your environments and everything up. Then you add in your effects because they are reactive. Yeah.
Mira,
Yeah.
can you repeat? I'm so sorry. Can you repeat that? The VFX thing? Like, can you repeat it?
Repeat it.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I was kind of paying attention, but then I didn't. Can you repeat it just to get it, just to get it in my brain, just right?
All right. Effects versus or video effects. Okay, so animation is practically character driven, story driven, directed. It is causative. Yeah. It drives the story. It drives the story. An example would be, for example, characters, cars, jet, monster. Yeah. The camera action, etc. Like that. A missile, a gun. Yep. All of this stuff is animation. It's causative animation. Then you have effects. This is like from this is reactive. Like after something is animated, what does it do? Could be water. An example could be like water, fire, distraction, cloth, hair, fur, the wind, explosion. Notice that a missile goes into an explosion. So you animate the missile and then an explosion happens. Shoot a gun and then
Yeah,
a
that makes
bullet
sense.
hits something, a ricochet.
Just gonna ask, this might be a dumb question, but what do you do if an like special effect causes an animation at some point? Imagine someone like kicks a rock downhill, which breaks a dam, which floods them in the next shot. Would you already create that breaking dam just to get like the basic animation down for the next shot? Or would
In
you
this
go
case,
in and only create the next shot where it is a main focus of the scene and then create it in the previous one?
in this case, usually because it's hard to control reactive simulations, you would use an animatic. Animatic is like blocked animation, as Kate mentioned in the chat. She says they tend to use block out stuff. That's correct. So, for example, blocked out react to nations, planned ideas. So for example, you would use like a sea of cubes animated by hand, or like a big like subsurface division mesh to animate how the dam opens. A whole bunch of blocks you would just quickly animate together and explain to the simulation artist or to plan it for later to work it, like a block of ice shoots out and it's like a triangle piece of geometry. I do this a lot. This project, for example. Go to the videos, find this character. Load up the animation. So I have this scene and I have it worked on. These are shots that I've rendered in. But on the next shot, after this one, here's the character and he's blocked out. And notice that this white cube, this is supposed to represent another thing that I'm going to rig and simulate later. So this rigged cube is my mask that he's going to be flinging around on his finger like a rubber band. So I blocked out, or animator, he blocked out this cube, animated it to the character so that I have a general idea of where I should put the mask. This character, yeah? I have this like transparent blue thing to show that's where the water simulation is going to be, how it's going to work. Ends there. Yep. So that's what you would do with an animatic, is to create like the plan of what you want to add in the special effects to. And for example, right now with this tornado that I have, rig that I created, I'm geometry nerds, so I'm proving quite a headache because link the crashing.
I was about to ask if that's a simulation.
It is not.
Oh, that looks crazy good.
So this is a little tornado, and the tornado actually has its own animatable rig and everything. So I have my cartoon rig all ready to go. Particles and rings. They're actually squash donuts with a noise modifier, and that's it. Simulation my ass. But this is what I would call a special effect that I would add after. Yeah. To find out why is Blender crashing every time I link it and make it append to.
You said crashing in the exact moment my Blender crashed.
Yeah. All right, so let's we're deviated a long way, so let's go back to the question. How do you collaborate with people? How do you, for instance, if you create a collaborative Blender short film, what would be the recommendation? Basically, you need someone who has a big picture. You need someone who understands the entire pipeline of the factory, who understands where the money's coming from, story, what is the target objective, what is the goal of the film or the product, how are you going to sell the product, and you need someone who's able to understand what the limitations of production, how does the production work, how can you make it become something real, so that you can tell an artist who doesn't need to worry about the business to do the job. Yeah. So once you have the production nice and clear, this director person, or this person who has the general idea of what is the story, what is the production, and what is the business of that short film, start telling people, all right, I need you to imagine a landscape in a desert. Imagine this character who uses a scarf with these goggles, walks through the desert. And then the artist goes, okay, I'll draw him. And he draws it. And the other person, okay, I'll model him. And he models it. Or you set up a task, system of tasks to start organizing, okay, who does what do they need to do, in what time frame, what is the time limits, what is the polygon limits, what are the rigging limits, what is the animation style, what is the lighting limits, what render engines are we going to use, etc. So you need someone who has the big picture so that you can manage the team of people who don't need to worry about the big picture and worry more about the finesse details of the art. That's how you start working collaboratively. You have a person who has working with the team at full director, but he just sees the big picture and understands the pipeline and is able to make sure that everyone can work together through the pipeline, contributing to the final end product. That's a valuable thing. So you need that person, right? If you don't have a head, it's just like a body. If you don't have a brain, body, some things the body can do by itself, breathe, heart can pump, digest food. There are some things that the body cannot do without the brain. Move its hands intentionally. Make relationships with others. Talk. Okay? We see passively, but we talk. So it's like you need a person who's the head, another person who are the hands, like the spinal cord, a person who's like a nerves. Or you need someone who's a bit of everything of the body, a person who works with the body to make it efficient. Yeah. So where with your last question, it says for larger creative projects, is it better to have everyone contribute to the story from the very start or already come there? As I mentioned earlier with direction, sometimes it's easier once you have a general idea and general pathway for the people to fit in and work. You need a general pipeline for people to work in it. You have your pipeline clear, which is the story, or the production pipeline, then we'll know what they need to do and how to do it with less overhead and micromanagement.
What about in the context of like a community project? For instance, if someone were to try to create a short film within like a community base, not necessarily like an industry film production company already set up pipeline workflow where there's not any money going towards the project, but it is more so just um, more so based around coordinating people and people's different interests into a final product. Because the honest context with part of this is at some point I would love to be able to personally try to create a group of people that would be interested or form a group of people that would be interested in creating some animated Blender short film all together. Similar to like, Aaron, like the Christmas card, but in a longer form, like short animated way.
Okay. Collaborations is a very difficult one to do because once you start collaborating, everyone is a director and everyone is a worker. Yeah?
Mm.
And to do that, you need to focus on motivation. How does it work? We all need motivation to work, right? So to get it going as a collaboration, we need some kind of incentive to make the work happen. And this type of incentive needs to be either it's Christmas time and we all want to be part of a big picture of someone who's relatively popular in the social networks. That was a good motivation for the Christmas production. I made this short film that I'm not working on right now, but like this is kind of like the background project that I do when there's no questions. Aero Firma. This production is kind of a collaboration. I had a group of people, students, who were connecting every week, trying to do some of the homework for some time. And motivation was I was teaching them, giving them classes, I was workshop, some homework. But as soon as I changed the project to become just work on the project to make it happen, the motivation disappeared and everyone disappeared. And now the project is just me now. Yeah. Mainly because I removed the motivation, which was the workshops, because I needed material from the short film to continue. I did 16 workshops over 5 months, and in Spanish.
Which are you talking about the short thing?
Exactly.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. You were there, Andromeda. Through it all.
I know. I'm
So-
not gonna say anything, but
But that's exactly what happened. Because there was no motivation to continue your film, for example, a personal gain of understanding more, personal gain of learning a new technique, getting new materials. Without that workshop, collaborative short film is a collaborative failure. So I would need to think of like rebuilding the short film with some kind of incentive, educational incentive or a monetary incentive. Finish
wait,
it.
but you're not like mixing up everyone on that, right? You're just saying some people.
Yeah, some
right?
people, the general majority.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's be clear about stuff.
because you're okay, you're fine, and some other people stuck around, but I've lost contact with everyone else.
I needed to say something. I was like, no. Anyway,
It's a bias, and it's an example, all right? It's an example based on some reality, but it's not 100% true. So yeah, just to take another collaborative project that I did was they always fall flat on their face. Reason being because no motivation. Because to be a director, you need a big picture of a payoff. Okay? Short film award is not enough. Payment, financing, you need to improve the local economy. You need to get tax rebates, or you need to get some kind of like government funding, or even like a competition funding or a prize. There needs to be some kind of motivation. At least the directors or who have the big picture to drive the project, and those who don't have the big picture to be able to fit into the project. And so you need to focus on motivation. You want someone to collaborate on why? Why should they? Why should they put hundreds of hours of their time into a project? For what? What do they get out of it?
It's a good question.
So when you open up a collaborative project, for example, on Artella or something, you need some kind of big picture and some kind of motivation to make. Sometimes it's ethics, save the planet, help the polar bears. This is for worldwide fund of saving the panda bears or something like that. Then there's an ethical motivation to do it. But even then, is that enough to motivate people to dedicate hundreds of hours of their time? You need to think about. So that's one of the big mistakes is you have a collaborative project and there's no motivation.
When you say motivation, is that distinct from incentive?
Similar, no?
So,
Kate asks, in the same type of a project and context, what are your tips for overlapping skill sets when delegating tasks as a group? Everyone volunteering for tasks. Save the Australian land toad. What are your tips for overlapping skill sets when delegating tasks as a group? There was little or no motivation. That was a mistake. So, little or no motivation, and the overlap. I guess this. So when you overlap, you go back to this pipeline thing. When, for example, let's take a tour of a character. Okay. For example, this is the timeline of developing a character for animation. So have At the beginning here, I have the concept, right? So this person knows how to make concept art, and then we model it. We UV it. We texture it, right? And then we do materials. While we are modeling, we're also doing the rigging. Right? And while we're doing the rigging, we're also doing characterization. Because characterization is kind of like making a library of animations or drawings of how they're supposed to be, so that rigging can create this characterization. So this has from the model goes to rigging, and characterization as well goes into rigging. And from rigging, we reach the finish line. Woo woo! Let's party and celebrate. Now it's time to animate. And then we animate. So let's get another color and let's find an interesting artist. Okay, so this artist, good at concept, good at modeling. He does all of this, but she doesn't know anything about rigging. So we find another artist who's good at rigging, modeling, and animation, and so that means he'll be good at characterization. So this artist in the pipeline, you give them the job of creating the concept, creating the model, creating the UV, creating the texture and the model and the materials. And when the model is finished, you give the model to the person who's good at rigging, and they do the rigging of that character. Meanwhile, the textures and the materials and visualization is happening. When the materials are finished, this artist here can move on to another character and continue doing the same process with the next character, or multiple characters with the same steps. Meanwhile, the person who's doing the rigging and the topology fixes and the characterization animation uses these models and carries on. So the overlap between the generalists is based on their bias, their strengths. What are they best at? But because this rigger understands models, he's able to fix the topology of this generalist without this generalist needing to think too much about rigging too much, because they just model the general character. This rigger may be even like the retopology artist. He creates the modeler could be just sculpts, you know? So depends on like this model, is it a sculpt? And then the rigger retopologizes it because he knows how to make the mesh for the rig correctly. And that's where the overlap happens based on their skills and like how far up the pipeline do you go. Does it make sense, Kate? Oh, good. So we're coming up to second hour. So Isaac, I'm going to wrap up, and then I'm going to close the Q&A, I suppose, and we can like keep some questions for next week.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for going in depth so much with this one. I really appreciate it. It's really interesting answers.
Yeah. So Pers, I'll give you a quick summary, yeah? Since you arrived quite late, but I like doing a summary to just load. Quick answer. The question was, wondering at least about working in the pipeline in a visual film. What is the recommended process? Have someone who knows the big picture, story, pipeline. You're getting grocery. Okay, and then from there, understand pipeline well enough so that it's easy to integrate people to the tasks or that general overall goal. From there, how you just work it. So basically, work with the factory pipelines that exist and focus on different types of making things efficient. So this pipeline is tried and true, and there are some optimizations. For example, pre-production could be done with like Unreal Engine in real time. Right? Just develop everything and then do your production on the set and shoot it like you would with real cameras. then render that out. Or, like you can mix and match different things, but you got to understand the general pipeline of what the factory produces. So have someone who knows the big picture of the story and the pipeline, and when you understand the pipeline well enough, it makes it easier for people to integrate it. Okay, so you can fit here, you can do this, that helps this. And you can work with that or this person to do this or this. Or you can or even if you don't have a story, you can work on the story to do this, to do that. If you understand the pipeline, you understand how to work with others. And make sure everyone works together. Try to understand the big picture. Work with the big picture, with everyone's strengths, abilities. So that's the quick answer is how do you work with it? Well, follow the production pipeline. Next question was, what are the main mistakes you see when you on your own collaboration work? Void. Quick one was there was little or no motivation. Pipeline was not clear. I wasn't sure what I was doing. I'm doing. What is it? What is project's experimental? The end goal is not very clear, or it's just a love project instead of a project that has a specific production pipeline. So that was a bit found in many different things. The pipeline was not clear. To work that, got to focus that there is some kind of. And for larger creative projects, it's better to have everyone contribute to the story from the very start, or already come to the group with a general. There. When it comes to direction, you know how the saying, too many cooks spoil the soup? If you want things done, you don't need a lot of direction in the story. So if you have a general story that helps people feel connected to it and tells them what they need to do and how to do it and how they can contribute to it, it might be less creative, but the project would be able to be produced in an efficient way. So Kate has another small question. Do you arm wrestle for the position of a director or a creator? What do you mean by arm wrestle? Jelly wrestle, huh? I don't have that many muscles. Well, when it comes to, okay, so this is like the concept of when you collaborate, it's good to know who is what and what does what, who is who. Yeah, kind of like a business. Okay, you have the business owner, have the story director, creative director, have your technical director, then you have your supervisors, and then you have everyone who does the work depending on the different areas that they're working on. A clear hierarchy that the person who's hired to create the models has enough creative liberty to direct how the models are created, but they don't have enough creative liberty to say how the business should be run, how the creative story should be created, should be done. So when you have clear roles, clear idea of who's doing what, will be more efficient. If you start a collaborative project where everyone is a director and everyone is a creator, and there's no clear pipeline and no clear head of the project, then it's a recipe for failure. Because then it becomes political. When it becomes political, people fighting for their egos and who wants to be right. Game of Thrones, exactly. Who has the best story? Who has the best idea? Cool. Not cool, actually. Internal competition sometimes just kills projects. Unless you have creative competition of okay, who can design the best character? then everybody works together to design the best character. And that would be the workaround. You have a head who provides a direction for competition for the end goal. Once again, they have a clear pipeline and you have a head. This open collaboration, the competition, creative competition, is healthy. Everyone's taking ideas from each other and they're building new characters and everyone's voting on their best characters and then the character gets designed and it becomes healthy. But you still need a head. You still need someone who's a moderator, poses the competitions, and who has a general idea of what the pipeline needs at that particular moment for the many artists to kind of compete on. So Pers mentioned something that healthy internal competition, great. That's what I'm talking about. But unhealthy internal competition is incredibly toxic. And unhealthy internal competition is mainly because you are competing on the basis of ego, not because of organization or the end. The pragmatic result of the competition, everyone moves forward. But if you're competing, kind of like try to direct and become the head of the project, then that's when it becomes. That's the toxic aspect. That's when you start sabotaging each other, as Pers mentions. So you need to be careful about that. Focus on motivation. Focus on making sure the pipeline is clear and having healthy internal competition to make sure that the motivation of like, oh, the best character design that was voted on by everyone who's working on the collaboration pushes the project forward. But yeah, Pers mentions he used to run his bands by committee, but he found out a long time ago the bands need a leader. And like any business, any project, and dad, yes, that's exactly what you need to be. You need leaders. A leader is not someone who's bigger or better than everyone else. No. A leader is just someone who works with everyone else, who has the big picture, and who knows how to work on the big picture. Each different area. That's all it is. It's not someone who's dominant. It's not someone who's controlling everyone. It's just someone who knows how to make sure the pipeline works. They understand the story. They understand the entire production. They become director. And yeah, they're people. They understand what motivates people.
Mira.
Yeah.
Se me cayó el internet. Can you like resume? Oh my god.
Is it that interesting?
Well, no, see, because I'm doing the things. So I gotta like be, responsible and stuff.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, just so I don't fall through a black hole and forget about it. Sorry. Yes. Sorry, everyone. Sorry.
It's okay. Hello.
Okay. Pez says, how dare you?
The internet sometimes like this goes down for I don't know reasons unknown. So I'm sorry.
No problem. Yeah, the British Isles have also been dealing with that lately. That's true. Yeah. Right.
But I think it was like the time that the guy like smashed into a pole, that kind of situation. Probably. Like I'm not even joking. I think people think when I say these things are jokes. No, real life.
I understand it. Here, there was one point that someone forgot to waterproof the cable connection to the house. But every time it rained, I would lose the internet. It would just short circuit. And every time it rained, and I had to call up a number of times. They said, no, the service is perfectly fine. Everything's fine. It's like, but it's raining and I have no internet. And eventually they fix it. But yeah, where it's time to not have internet is when it's raining. So quick summary. The question was, for larger projects and collaboration, how do you make sure that people don't step on each other's toes creatively and with direction? Well, you got to be a good leader and have a big picture and understand the motivation of everybody, and also have a good pipeline. Have pipeline. If you don't have a pipeline, nobody can do anything. And if you have a pipeline, you can compete creatively, healthily to advance the pipeline. Yeah? You can work with each other's differences because you understand the pipeline. Yeah? Be a good leader is like lead by example. Run the pipeline. And understand motivations of everyone. Focus on motivation. This is an important one. Motivation really big. Usually the biggest motivation in life is money, but it is not the only one. A good business has money, but also other motivations like internal work culture, that it's fun, or you're helping improve some kind of ethical concept. You know, you're a green company that uses EV instead of cycles because it doesn't require so much computing power to render, or you all work together because of that goal, or you all want to be an animation team that does edge of the line technological animation of NPR techniques. At the very best, exactly. And so you gotta understand what motivates your team. Good leader. From there, have a clear pipeline, and from the good pipeline, be able to fit people in and learn how to delegate them. Turn them into ham and cheese sandwiches. Sandwiches motivate you, yeah? Yeah. So you got to understand people. Communication, obviously, be a good leader. Communicate. But motivate is not like, it's not cheerleading. Motivation is kind of like, I don't know what it is. I'm still learning, but it's kind of like prodding, I suppose, or kind of like delegation. Delegation, setting the vision, yeah, right? Which is like practically, if this works, if you do this like this, it will be this. It will be awesome. Yeah. So it's like understanding.
I was saying that sounds more like incentivization. To incentivize people.
Exactly, I suppose.
Almost.
Or motivate.
Yeah. They're pretty similar, so. Yeah.
Running bands is like herding cats. Similar thing. So we're all artists. We all want to do good things. So you also got to understand, allow the bracketing of creativity, because we're all creatives, right? So bracketing and creativity is a concept that I use based on a cognitive bias in marketing, or bracketing that you're supposed to call, or anchoring. So what you do is you set like a goal, but you allow the artist to do whatever they want around that particular goal. And they come up with some really cool stuff, and people do it, and they're really motivated. You've done this as well, Andromeda. Okay. Like, for example,
What do you mean?
Like, do you remember that dragon head that you made and the horse head?
Oh, yes, it was beautiful.
Yeah, it turned out great. It was wonderful. And all I told you, the concept was, well, here's the project, here's some reference images, here's the general like goal and idea, but I didn't tell you exactly what you needed to do, and you made something great. That's when you do anchored direction, so that we're all having fun. You made something awesome. I gave you some good instructions. There was a very clear transaction of motivation. We did an interchange of different skills, and we worked together on an end goal. That's a good example of collaboration.
Oh, friendship, so beautiful.
Rainbows.
Great joke. I'm sorry.
This is sick. I unfortunately need to head out to go to a meeting, but thank you so much, Trace.
Yeah, no problem.
This
So,
is great.
I'll wrap it up today and get back to work. Thanks for your time. Thanks for hanging out, people, for watching, listening, and sharing your ideas. Please bring in more questions like this.
It's definitely. I will. Excited for the next one next Thursday.
Yeah.
All right. Peace out.
Yeah, have a good one. I would share this in the chat as well. And I will stop transmitting now.